Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we have my December wrap-up. Now, I did do 24 days of Bookmas, so I ended up doing a video each day, unwrapping a book, reading it, and then talking about it, as I read it, and my thoughts and such. So if you want my fresh and in-depth thoughts about what these books are about, what I thought of them, definitely go check out the 24 days of Bookmas videos. I'll leave the playlist down below, and I'll also put which day I pulled each book, and then you can just watch, the next few videos where I talk about those books that I pulled. But yeah, I really did a lot there. And so I'm going to try to be a little bit more brief in this video. But you know me, I like to chat about the books. So this is going to be a long video. Make sure you have yourself a snack, something to drink, put me on in the background while you're doing something else, and just enjoy as I talk about these books. They're mostly Christmas books, but I do have a few that are not. And yeah, I'm very excited to talk about them. This is my last official monthly wrap up. Going forward in 2026, I'm going to do weekly updates and not monthly wrap ups. I'm changing things a little bit on my channel. And so this will be the last official wrap up that I do with stats, monthly stats, and the books each month. But I will be updating you guys each week. So that will be a lot of fun. And so yeah, let's get to talking about these books because there's a lot of them. I originally started with 25 books, so 24 books for Bookmas, and then one book. Well, I actually had 2 books for my genre-a-thon, but one book for that was one prompt, and then I had 2 rollovers and 5 extra books, which includes the extra book for my genre-a-thon. Genre-a-thon was also the last month I was doing that. That was the last year. So it was the final time. And I'll leave that playlist link down below. You can watch all 3 years if you want and use those prompts if you'd like. But let's go ahead and get into it. So as always, I start with my stats. Then I go from the books I didn't get to the lowest books all the way to my favorite book of the month by star rating. And then I also have a top 3 that doesn't necessarily correspond to star rating. It's just what was very stuck out in my mind. So let's see here. So I did read 30 books. I did end up DNFing 2 books. So I had 32 books total on my list for the month. And 2 of them I did end up DNFing. So I did start them, but for reasons which I'll get into, I did not finish them. Page count was 7,487. I read 27 books physically. I didn't have any digital books. I had 3 audiobooks, which equaled 31 hours and 15 minutes. My average was 241.51 pages per day and 1 hour and 48 minutes per day. Fiction, I read 27 fiction, 3 nonfiction, and 2 of my reads were rereads. My top moods were lighthearted, emotional, and mysterious. So there you go. Genres, again, these overlap, so some books fit multiple genres. But I had 11 romance, 5 mystery, 5 fantasy, 5 contemporary, 2 young adult, 2 thriller, 2 memoir, 2 historical, 1 classic, 1 sports, 1 short stories, 1 science fiction, 1 literary, 1 horror, 1 history, and 1 biography. So I did not have any books I did not get to, which was fantastic. Like I said, it was a big reading month, which I always do well in December as far as reading goes. As far as DNFs, like I said, I did have 2 of those. They are 1 stars for me. Normally, I wouldn't rate them because a lot of times it's just it's not the writing style is not for me. But in this case, one of them I read a good chunk, and the other one was just so problematic that I did end up rating them on Goodreads 1 star and listing my reasons why. I always put I DNF'd at this point and yada yada. So let's start. The bottom of the barrel was Train Tracks by Michael Savage. It says family stories for the holiday. false advertising. That is not what this book is. I only ended up reading 49 pages. I didn't even use a bookmark, I just used the sleeve. So I didn't get very far, but those 49 pages were so problematic. So Michael Savage is apparently like a radio show host or something. I don't know who he is. I found this book and it said family stories for the holidays. I was looking for Bookmas books. I thought, perfect. That's not what this is. There is nothing to do with the holidays. And I even went and looked at a different review who read the whole thing, and she also gave it a 1 star. And she's like, yeah, has nothing to do with the holidays, and I certainly wouldn't read it with my family based on the content. Just in the 49 pages I read, it was just disgusting. Like, very misogynistic towards women. Acting like violence and guns and such aren't a problem at all. He used to work in like this basement that had different like stores and such, and this one guy would take battered women and take advantage of them and trade them for a dress. And like, if he's recounting that because that's something he's witnessed, fine. But the way he recounted it was like that wasn't problematic at all. Like, just disgusting things like that. And yeah, I'm just like, this is not holidays and this is disgusting and I don't want to read it. So DNF'd at 49 and it was a 1 star. There's that. Then my other 1 star that I DNF'd was A Heart for Christmas by Sophie Domain. Was a 24-day Advent calendar read, and you can see I got halfway through here, so I opened 12 of the days and then decided I was done and didn't open the rest. So, yeah, this one, the premise of it was good. It is young adult, which in and of itself is fine. My problem with this was like the girl's supposed to be 19 and acts way, way younger. So the whole premise is she 3 years ago ended up needing a heart transplant. And so for the last 3 years, she's kind of been reclusive, and her mother has been overly protective. Her parents are divorced. She's been staying with her mother. This is the first year she's visiting her father over Christmas. He lives in like a ski resort type town in France. Her parents don't get along. That drama and angst was over the top and ridiculous. The way the conversations went between her and her parents didn't feel realistic whatsoever. Every small little chapter I read was just so drama filled and angst filled. And like I said, the characters read a lot younger than 19. Like, I would put them at like 15, you know? So the whole premise is she's, kind of closed off and such. She goes to visit her father over Christmas for the first time in 3 years. She runs into her best friend's brother and starts to fall for him. And they start an attraction and have a little bit of a relationship. But she's scared to tell her best friend because her best friend and her brother don't get along. So her best friend's always ragging on the brother and always talking about the type of girls he dates. So she's really scared to tell her. And that, in and of itself, would have been fine. But she just, like, every chapter had to be drama. And I was looking for the story of her, connecting with her best friend's brother from childhood, reconnecting with him, and starting to come out of her shell after her heart operation and starting to kind of live life again and finding this romance. And that's not where the focus was. The focus was on the drama and the angst. And it was just like a teen soap opera, and I just couldn't do it. And kind of the final straw in chapter 12 was she finally asked her best friend, like, why don't you get along with your brother? Like, why are you always harping on him and such? And her best friend tells her about this girl and how he slept with her, and then things went wrong. And the way she just so cavalierly threw that in, it's a heavy, heavy topic that she threw in there, and the way she just cavalierly threw it in just to add that drama, I couldn't at that point. And lucky for me, Becky at Bex Reads also read this for Avid, and she finished it. And then in her video talking about the Avid read she did, told me what happened in this. So I know what happened and how it played out, and I'm so thankful I did not push through. Like, it was really easy. It was like 15 to 17 pages each day. and I would just read it in the morning real quick. It's YA, super easy to read, but I couldn't. And when she was talking about what's happened, I was rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh. And so yeah, I'm really glad I didn't push through this, because based on what's happened, like, no. But yeah, that 12 page, I just was like, I can't anymore. Like, real people like go through that, and you're just going in there for drama and being so cavalier and adding it one more dramatic thing to an already very dramatic story. So yeah, the premise was good, but where the author's focus was, and she wasn't very realistic as far as how this girl should have been acting at 19, and the conversations with the parents and such. Like, it was like what she thought, a teenager would do. Like, no. So anyway, that was my other 2-star read. I then had 1-star reads. Sorry, those were 1-star reads because I DNF'd them. I had 5 2-star reads, though. The bottom of the list, there's nothing really wrong with this. It just wasn't the greatest. My husband and I also read this as an Advent read, and that was Mystery for Christmas, which was edited by Cynthia Manson. So it had 12 stories from, I'll tell you here in a second. So in this collection, the stories are from the pages of Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine and Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine. And some of them really didn't feel very mysterious to me. And I was like, what's the point of these? And they're, short stories, which aren't my thing. Like, I want more development in a story. And also mysteries aren't really my thing either. So I'm like, I don't know. I just thought it would be fun though. And most of them were misses. Some of them were fun, but most of them were misses. There was a couple that had to deal with mall Santa Clauses or mall Father Christmas and like cops at Christmas time and such. But yeah, it really wasn't for me. Like, they were easy to read. If you're a mystery person and you don't mind short stories, I think this would be a fun one for the holidays. And it was fun reading it. We read it every other day on odd days. And it was fun, just to sit down and read it real quick each night. But it just really wasn't my cup of tea. So there is that one. Then we had Gideon's Gift by Karen Kingsbury. And this is another one that was just like drama for drama's sake. And again, it drives me insane when authors do that. And it lessens the impact. So you have this little girl, Gideon, and she's battling leukemia. And she's in remission. And so she's like, before I got sick, we were going to go help out at this kitchen that feeds people who are on hard times. And so she wants to do that this year. And so they do that, and she meets this man who is having a hard time, and he's just very grumpy, and he yells at her, and she ends up giving him a gift, and he's like, puts it in his pocket, and he's like, I'll just throw it away later. Ends up finally opening it, and then that changes his whole world. And it's these red gloves, which is on the cover, so not really a spoiler. But yeah, it was just like the drama for drama's sake, and how horror, and it's not like she's trying to make it inspirational, but it's like, how much tragedy can we put in here? And it's a short book, and I'm like, no, don't just put tragedy and trauma and drama for the sake of it. If she had focused maybe on either Gideon or the man, instead of going back and forth for both and having tragedy filled lives for both. And it's and I can see the premise, she's sick and she wants help. But then all of a sudden things turn, and all of a sudden, because these gloves came into his life, he finds God, and everything is so much better because he finds God, which is what really irritates me in Christian fiction, is when, oh, because I found God, everything's magically better. And the whole thing with him and why he's homeless is, and his past and such, he never believed in God. And now all of a sudden, because a little girl gives him gloves, he's going to believe in God? No. So yeah, just tragedy and trauma for the sake of it, and to make it as tragic and trauma as possible, and then making it as inspiring as possible because they have God, and so everything works out. Nope. So there's that one. Then we had A Winter Dream by Richard Paul Evans. This one is based on Joseph and his coat of many colors, but it's a modern day biblical retelling. And so this one, you have Joseph and his family has this like small advertising firm in Colorado. His brothers end up pushing him out, and he goes to like Chicago and then New York and back and forth and such. The premise of this story was fine, and kind of the plot line and everything, that was fine. It was the way the women were portrayed in this that I just couldn't. So the first, he has a serious girlfriend and he's thinking about marriage, which he hasn't talked to her about. And when his brothers push him out, they're like, you can't tell anybody. You just got to go and you can't tell anybody. And he's like, well, what about my girlfriend, you know? And well, if she loves you, she'll just follow you. When she's told him she has no intention of ever leaving Colorado. She loves living here. She has no intention of ever leaving. And so he tells her, but he doesn't tell her why. And he's like, I'm moving tomorrow, and just expects her to follow along because she loves him. And he's never talked about marriage with her. And she's like, no, I have no interest in leaving and I don't want marriage. And so he ends up acting the victim, like, oh, I dodged a bullet with that one. Like, no, like, that's not appropriate. So it's not really misogynist, it's more chauvinist, you know? And just expects this little woman to fall in line and follow him to Chicago when she has no intentions of leaving Denver, or not Denver, but, you know, Colorado, and then just marry him and have babies. Like, no, 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 no. Then he meets a girl in Chicago and she has this big secret. And they end up dating a while. He's like, it's okay. And they end up dating, and then he's thinking about marriage with her. So he's like, but I can't marry someone I don't know. So he forces her hand to tell this, you know, major secret that she has from her past. So she tells him, he leaves her in the restaurant crying, which, okay, you have to process, whatever. He says, like, look, I need to process this. I'll call you tomorrow. Proceeds not to call her for a week, and then shows up to pick her up for his company Christmas party, expecting her to just be waiting for him, but she's gone. And I'm like, and he's like, it may not make sense to you. It's a guy thing that I just expected her because I didn't tell her that we weren't going to the Christmas party. She shared her biggest secret. She was super upset. And then you don't call her for a week when you told her you would call her, and you just expect her to be sitting there waiting. And kind of the way the author made her respond to that whole situation, like the leaving, fine, but the way she went about leaving didn't make sense either. And the way she went about coming back either didn't make sense. And then you have his boss who kind of does things by feeling. So he'll promote you or demote you based on how whether he likes you or his feelings about you. And he has this model girlfriend. And so she comes on to Joseph and then pulls out the R card when they get caught, because she, you know, pulls him down on top of her. And then the guy walks in and pulls out the art card and like, oh, he attacked me, and and again, that situation in and of itself would have been fine, but at that point, you already had the other two women, and it just gave me the ick. The way he kind of presented that and executed it, it gave me the ick, and I'm just like, no. So it was really the way the women were. When I read three other Richard Paul Evans books, I didn't have that in those. Like the women seemed fine in those, so I don't know what happened here. I don't know if this one was before those ones or after those ones. Like maybe he was a newer author. I have no clue. It says 2012 was when this was published, but yeah, I just like, what the heck is going on? Like that is not how women act. And yeah, it just came across very chauvinist, and then that whole situation with the model was just icky, and yeah, did not love that aspect of it. So then we have our other Advent read that I read with my husband. So again, a 12-day Advent, and so we read this on even days, and that's Christmas Eve Love Story by Jenny Baird. And this one, the characters were fine. It was really, I read another Jenny Baird, which I'll talk about. The author really will say something and then say it again. It's like, and she really tries to drive home that point. She gets very repetitive. It's a Groundhog Day trope, so there is a certain repetitive, but she was inconsistent with the Groundhog Day trope while still being repetitive about some things. And then I was just like, That really got to me. There was a lot of editing issues in here, which it had 2 times to be edited because she actually wrote this and that should have been edited then. And then I think it was Walmart picked this up to make it into an advent, and like apparently they didn't care about making sure it was edited. They just made it into an advent. Because at one point, Braden, which is our main male character, the love interest, turns into Brandon. There was other little typos. He's going to his mom's for dinner on Christmas, and then suddenly, well, what time should I come to dinner tomorrow? When it's Christmas Day now that he's talking to her, and then okay, well, I'm leaving and I'm coming. I'm like, when did this tomorrow get thrown in there? So things like that, some typos and whatnot. But yeah, and it was very kind of cheesy at moments, very cliche, which cliche rom-coms, especially holiday ones, like I don't mind that so much. But it was just like and like some of the things she would say as far as in relation to the Groundhog Day trope, like it was like that didn't really make sense. Like, do you not know how a time loop works? Like the things our character would say. And then towards the end, and I guess to add like a little bit of that conflict, that third act conflict, all of a sudden our character's getting mad at Braden for not remembering and not promising her a future when they finally make it to Christmas Day. And then she's like, well, then she's flip flops and thinks he's mad at her because he's stuck in this time loop. I'm just like, girl, my goodness. So yeah, the premise was there, the characters were fine, but it was not well executed. Like, worst example of a Groundhog Day trope that I've read. So there's that one. And so then my last 2-star, I'm so mad about this one because it would have been a 5-star read, is 12 Days of Mistletoe by Jen Atkinson. This is a clean Christmas rom-com, so if you're looking for something clean, this is it. And so is a Christmas Eve love story. Like, there's no spice or anything. So this one, my problem with this one, I love the characters, I love the story, the setup. It was so cute, so fun. The writing was really fun and easy to get into. The problem with this is one of the plot points or devices or whatever you want to call it. Basically, our main character, Bonnie, has a service dog. And she's living in this apartment and she's hiding the fact that she has a dog because it's a no pets dog. But it's not a pet, it's a service dog. And on the back, it calls it an emotional support animal, which emotional support animals and service dogs are 2 completely different things. So, and the author had some things right, but she didn't do her due diligence as far as research. And there's so much misinformation around service dogs. And as a service dog handler myself, and as somebody who's helped others train service dogs and seeing the struggles they go through, like, it really irks me when there's misinformation. And so the fact that she used this and she's putting that misinformation out there and contributing to it, like, that's what made it a 2-star when it would have otherwise been a 5-star read. So it's emotional support animal on the back when it's actually a service animal. She's hiding it where you have rights, reasonable accommodations for service animals, even in housing that doesn't allow pets. So that was really frustrating. She's talking to him like she's task trained, but it's almost like she doesn't like think she has the rights. Which, as a handler, like, you need to know your rights. And so she's hiding the dog, which is problematic in itself. Like, you're just making more problems for other handlers by trying to hide it and whatnot. And then she gets caught and she comes down and he's doing like family photographs with his family. And they each have an announcement, and then his mom just puts his name because he has no announcement. And he's like, I'm dating somebody. And then she walks in and it's like, please just play along, like, be my girlfriend, my fake girlfriend. Well, the grandmother's in on it, and he's trying to buy this apartment complex. His grandmother's the one that owns it. And so he's trying to buy it. And so he's been leaving her notes about her dog and such. I'm trying to, like, basically, like, hey, you need to, like, get rid of your dog. Like, it's not allowed. Not knowing it's a service dog. So he finds out, and then the grandmother's, like, knows, like, they're faking it. And so she's like, for the next 12 days, like, you guys are going to date, and you got to make it real, though. So you're going to practice kissing and everything. And basically, the grandmother's just been meddling and trying to get them together, which is why, she's set up, like, these rules. He has to live there for 6 months and make sure all the tenants are following the rules and such, which is why he's such a stickler about this dog not being allowed, even though the grandmother knows about the dog. Well, the grandmother ends up blackmailing her, and Like, she's like, laws have changed. Like, that's an outdated policy. Laws have changed. But then she goes on to blackmail her regarding her service dog and, like, basically fake date my grandson, but you have to kiss. And I'm just like, you just acknowledge that laws have changed and now you're blackmailing them? Like, no. Like, no, 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 no. Which, I mean, you can kind of see it because it's the grandma meddling, so maybe she's just like, not serious about it. But anyway, so she does that. She is a task trained, like she has tasks. Like, it's not an emotional support, even though it's for anxiety. She has tasks she does. So she's a task trained service dog, which is the difference. Emotional support animals aren't trained. They don't do specific tasks. They just offer comfort. Where service dogs are task trained to mitigate a disability. At one point, they're talking and she's like, dogs, cats, and horses can be service animals. And he's like, horses, horses, and just moves on. One, cats cannot be service animals. They can be emotional support animals, but they cannot be service animals. Two, it's miniature horses specifically. So he's thinking horse, full-size horse. That's not the case. It's miniature horses. So again, a chance to expand on that and educate instead of, putting misinformation and whatnot. Then, at one point she does leave her service animal at home and she ends up having an attack. And that was realistic because there are certain places where you can't take a service animal. One, it's not safe for them, or two, like zoos, it will affect the other animals. Some places at zoos you can't take your service animal. Obviously, like in sterile environments or where they're prepping food in like a kitchen, you can take it to the restaurant, but not the kitchen because they're prepping food. Things like that. So she does leave her service animal. So like I said, she had some correct information. It's task trained, so it is an actual service animal. She doesn't take it to the theater or the opera or whatever it is because it's not safe for her and things like that. Then she goes dress shopping and she makes the comment about how the grandma had to convince the store clerk to let the dog in. But she takes this dog everywhere. If you're taking this dog everywhere, you should know that she's a service dog, so she's allowed. And so again, access issues are a thing. And so she had the opportunity to make it into an access issue and, maybe explain the law to the service clerk or whatever. But she doesn't do that. She just makes it sound like this girl doesn't know that, like, this is a service. She's treating it more like she's kind of treating it between a service animal and an emotional support animal, which emotional support animals aren't allowed places, but, people buck the law and such. So that's kind of where it dropped it down. I was so frustrated with this because otherwise it would have been a 5-star read. I really like Bonnie, and Elliot is the guy's name. I really like them. I like the grandmother, even though the whole blackmail issue thing. Like, I really like kind of her meddling and such. I thought that was fun. And the family was fun. But yeah, it's like if you're gonna, write service animals, make sure you understand. Like, just look at the ADA. Like, yes, there's a lot of misinformation on Google, but if you go directly to the ADA, the information's there. And so, like, you did partial research, but you didn't do your due diligence and you're spreading misinformation. So that's where that one got dropped down, which is such a shame because it might have been one of my favorite books of the month. Well, it would have been my favorite book of the month. Not my favorite, but one of the top ones of the month. If it wasn't for that misinformation. Anyway, I'm going to stop harping on that now. Then we had 4 3-star reads. The bottom of that one was The Christmas Thief by Mary and Carol Higgins Clark, so mom and daughter duo. This one was fine. It has characters that are part of a bigger series. And I actually read later on, like I read this one first, even though it takes place after the events of Deck the Halls. So it references that a little bit, which was fine. Like, it didn't reference it enough that it was an issue. But basically in this one, you have this guy, he gets out of jail or prison, and he basically swindled a bunch of people. And one of the characters, which is from the series, is this couple that had won the lottery, and she's an amateur sleuth. And then she's friends with this private investigator, which they met in Deck the Halls. And so they're getting together for Christmas in Vermont, I think, somewhere. Anyway, so she's an amateur sleuth, and so she's won the lottery. And one of her friends, she's created like the support group for lottery winners. And one of her friends also won the lottery and got swindled by this guy. So there's a connection there. He gets out of prison. And so her friend's like all mad and like, why don't you come with us? Like, come to Vermont, have a vacation. And he had hid a bunch of the money, and he had hid it in this tree, which ends up getting chosen to be the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. So he, breaks bail and he's headed to Vermont to track down his, stuff that he stashed away. And then it turns out like his tree is chosen, so that kind of throws a wrench in the plan and everything else. And they're trying to kind of figure out like what's going on. The lottery winner that originally got swindled ends up going missing. And so they're trying to figure out. I've noticed this in the other books I've read. I've read 2 other books by this author, or these authors. One by the duo and one just by Mary Higgins Clark. And she adds in point of views that are just unnecessary. Like they don't really add anything to the story. You get the same information through like the main point of views. And so there's unnecessary POVs. The characters that are from the bigger series really didn't even feel like side characters. Like they've had like very minute roles in here, and it was more focused on the others, but it's like they're the characters from the series. Shouldn't they be focusing? Which for me personally actually kind of worked because we were following, it wasn't more of like a who done it or solving the mystery of it, because you're following the felon and everything like that, the missing friend, you're following their point of view, so what's happening. So that actually personally worked for me because I'm not a big mystery, solve it, figure out what's happening kind of person. But still, it was just a little weird because they're the characters from the bigger series from these authors, so that was a little weird. And yeah, it was just fine. The extra point of views were the biggest reason I didn't love it. But other than that, it was fine. Like, there's nothing specifically wrong. It was a fast, fun holiday suspense mystery story. So there's that one. The next one was, let's see here. Still have, okay. Like I still have a bookmark, but when a book comes with a bookmark, I end up always leaving it in. And so this one was Midnight at the Christmas Bookshop by Jenny Colgan. This is actually book 2, and I didn't read the first book. I haven't read that. This is my first book by this author. I have a couple others, which some of the characters were in here from those ones, but they weren't a major part or anything. So I might have missed some context not having read the first book, but I just really didn't see the point of this. And again, like the synopsis and what is on the synopsis isn't what is delivered. So it's talking about like this Hollywood film being filmed there in the summer. And then they end up, so you get a little clip of that in the beginning, which really doesn't add anything to the story. And then they end up showing up 2 times, once to like promote the movie and then another to have like a holiday party or something. And again, it just didn't add anything. It didn't add anything to the story at all. It didn't have a role in how maybe a slight one in how things work out as far as the romance aspect, but really it didn't, like it could have worked out the same way without this Hollywood aspect. So I have no clue why that was there. So you're following our main character and Carmen, and I'm assuming in the first book she came to, I think, Edinburgh and ends up helping to save this bookshop. I'm assuming in the first one, Mr. McCready is very much, he loves books, but he's not necessarily a business owner. So she's been living with her sister for like a year, and her sister just had a baby, is getting ready to go back to work, wants to hire a live-in nanny. It's like, you gotta go, So they kind of have a little falling out about that. And then she goes, and Mr. McCready is thinking of selling out to this local guy who is buying up businesses and basically making them into tourist traps. And so she's like, give me time. And he wants to go on this like Antarctica cruise. and he needs money for that, so he's thinking of selling out. She's like, just give me time. So he ends up like having this back room that's just full of books, and so she ends up trying to like renovate that and open it up to help earn money, which is again on the back, but again that's very minute part of the story, and it's going back and forth between her and her life and drama and that of Okay, who is her Brazilian boyfriend, who ends up getting like this research opportunity and in Brazil, so he ends up taking it and going back to Brazil. um and he's a Quaker and has like different religious things. And so she thinks that he doesn't want her because he won't sleep with her. So they have a big falling out, and then he gets this research opportunity to go to Brazil. And so you're going back and forth between her viewpoint and his. Um, and it just couldn't really get invested in that romance because it's like they're not together, they're not even talking to each other. And I think if we had gotten more like of Okay's perspective, because it was really heavily on Carmen's side, and I think if it had been a little bit more balanced, that might have worked. And then you have another potential love interest as well, with the new Manny, which was, I really liked that character. Rudy, he was a fun character. And so yeah, the characters were fine. Like, you got pulled in, but it's just like the point of the story. Like, what is even the point? And the extra things that didn't even make any sense. Like, I'm just like, what is happening here? Like, I was so confused for most of the book. And so yeah, it's more like if you like character driven stories, you probably enjoy this a little bit more, but it just kind of let me down, especially because like the synopsis was really misleading. Sometimes I wonder, like, I don't know who's in charge of writing the synopsis, like, but sometimes I wonder if they even read the book, whoever it is. Like, did you even read the book, or did you just kind of skim through and like, take key points that you thought you saw, without actually reading the book? Because like some synopsises don't deliver on what's in the book. Then we had A December to Remember by Jenny Bayliss. I read 2 Jenny Bayliss books last year and loved them. So I was really excited to get to this one. This is very different. So it does have romance in it, but it's more about these 3 sisters. So and they're older. So that was fun, especially because they were similar in age to myself and my sisters. So I have 2 older sisters and I'm the baby. But I'm not a hot mess like this one. And the baby of the family here is the same age as me, so that was fun. And so you have Maggie, Simone, and Star. And they're each kind of going through their own things. And so they have the same father and different mothers. Their father was kind of a wanderlust. He would collect antiques and just bring them home, but never really run the shop. And so he ends up passing away, and the sisters used to spend summers there when they were kids. And then as they got older, they grew apart, and 2 of the sisters are estranged because of things and whatnot. So they're older, they're each going through their own issues. Their father dies, and in order to get their inheritance, they need to complete 2 tasks. One of them's kind of the scavenger hunt, just to kind of get them working together. They need to find these little Monopoly houses, and he like individualized each one. And then the lawyer has a list, so that way they can't just like go buy a game and then like, here we go. So they have to work together, find these Monopoly houses. They're hidden all over the antique shop and whatnot. And then once they do that, he wants them to put on this winter festival that used to happen in this town and hasn't happened for a while. He wants them to revive that. So you have Maggie's the oldest, and she's kind of the peacekeeper. And she's lived in this town, but she never got the attention for, like, her sisters assumed because she lived there, she got the attention from her father. But past the summers when they were there, he didn't pay her any mind. He didn't even acknowledge her. And so she's there. She has the shop, and she's getting evicted. But she wants her kids to have, a happy Christmas. He has a 20-year-old son. His dad passed away, and then just kind of a drifter through. She got pregnant with her daughter, who's like 10, and her daughter is obnoxious, like obnoxious. So anyway, and she's dating her employee who's like 10 years younger than her. And she wants to keep it a secret because she's worried she's, done having kids. She's older, and she's worried he's going to want kids and she can't provide that to him. And just kind of projecting onto him what she thinks his thoughts are. which is probably so, you have that romance and those struggles. Then you have Simone, and it's her and her wife, and she really wants a baby. She wants to carry the baby, but they've been doing IVF and she hasn't been able to get pregnant. And her wife has no interest in carrying the baby. And she's like worried, like, you're gonna resent me if I end up carrying it because that's something you really want to do. And so they're having issues, and she's like, we need times apart. So you go, to deal with this thing with your father's inheritance, and I'm gonna stay here, and we just need time apart. So you have her, and she's dealing with that. And then you have the youngest Star, who has this ex-boyfriend who's caused a lot of problems. That's why she's estranged from Simone. She got evicted from her last place because of this ex-boyfriend who recently got out of jail. Like, he's addicted to drugs and such. And he just won't leave her alone. And so she's dealing with that. And then you have a appraiser from Sotheby's who is coming in to the antique shop to appraise things, and him and Star start to have a little relationship as well. So that was fun. But yeah, it just, I don't know. I think I would have enjoyed it more if we followed one sister, but you didn't get the romance because you're following, all the different sisters and the different struggles and such. You didn't really get, like, yeah, you got like the scavenger hunt, and yeah, you kind of got the winter festival, and I did end up listening to this, but I don't know, it just, because you're dealing with like their own personal crises and like their relationship, like, it just felt too scattered. And I think I would have enjoyed the story more if we had followed one sister, like probably Star, because she had like the actual romance, and followed her, and got the other sister story through Star. I think I would have enjoyed it more, because I like the idea of it, and I like that we have older characters and that they're in different stages of relationship, and different dynamics. I really like that, but it just, I don't know, it kind of just fell short for me. I think it was just doing too much. And I couldn't enjoy any of the individual aspects of it as fully because of that. So there's that one. Then our last 3-star is Let It Snow, which has 3 different stories by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Myracle. The fun thing with this one is they're interconnected, and I will say the authors did such a fantastic job communicating with each other and setting it up. Like, each story referenced characters and situations from the other stories, and so it was really cohesive, which I loved. So we had, let's go inside here. The first one was the Jubilee Express by Maureen Johnson. And in that one, you have Jubilee. That's her name. And her parents end up getting arrested because they're really into like this specific brand of Christmas villages. And each Christmas Eve, they release a piece, and you want a numbered piece, because if you get a numbered piece, that's like super rare. And so that's what you want. So each Christmas Eve, they go camp out, and they used to give out 100 number pieces, and they dropped it down to 10 in the last 2 years. And so that big fight breaks out, and her parents get arrested. She was supposed to go to her boyfriend's Christmas party. It's their year anniversary. And her parents throw this party, or holiday party. I don't think it's specifically Christmas. Their holiday party, and her boyfriend's like, very academic, like all-star, the golden boy. Does good in academics, good in sports, like constantly like class president, like things like that. So he's always busy. And so she's like, I can't make it. Like, I'm getting sent on a train to go to my grandparents. The train gets stuck on the tracks outside this town, which is where all 3 stories take place. So the train gets stuck on these tracks. She meets this guy on the train, and he's trying to get there because of his ex-girlfriend, like that whole weird situation. And so she's like, the train, they end up having to cut power. So there's this Waffle House. So she goes to the Waffle House, and she meets this guy, and he's like, why don't you just come back to my house? And so it's him, his mom, and his little sister. So she ends up coming back, and he had a bad relationship. And so the only thing is there a romance between them. And the only thing I didn't like is that she already had a boyfriend. I wish they had kind of broken up to start with. versus her being in a relationship and then like 10 minutes after she breaks up turning around to this other guy because they spent 2 days together. Like whatever. So that one was fine. It was fun. I really liked Jubilee as a character. Then we had a Cheertastic Christmas Miracle by John Green. That one was okay. Like Jubilee Express was definitely my favorite. In this one, there's a group of cheerleaders that were on the train, and so they end up at this Waffle House. And you're actually following these three friends, and one of them's a girl and she likes one of the guys, but they treat her as one of the guys. So she's kind of like just one of the guys stuck in the friend zone with them. And she really likes him. And so like the guy from the Waffle House is a friend of theirs and calls them and like, you gotta get down here. There's cheerleaders and they're practicing and like get down here. And it's a blizzard, of course. So they're trying to get there and there's three guys working in the Waffle House and they each invite a friend, but they don't want the number of cheerleaders per guy to be too dispersed. So only the first group of people that get there will be allowed in, and the other two will have to turn around and go home. So he's like, you gotta get here and make sure you bring Twister. So they're trying to get there, and it's kind of this race, and they kind of battle it out between some of the other friends that are coming for the other two guys that work there. And so that part was fine. It was just more the way the cheerleaders were presented that I didn't love, and like that, oh my god, it's cheerleaders. Like, yeah, I can see that being a teen boy thing, but it was just kind of, and I wish it had focused, more on the two friends and their feelings for each other. And the race to get there was fine as well. It was more just the way the cheerleaders were presented. And then the Patron Saint of Pigs by Lauren Myracle, I did not love. So basically, in that one, you have a barista, and the guy from the train, that's his ex-girlfriend. And so that's who he's trying to get. So she's all sad because they broke up because she cheated on him. And she's just kind of, her attitude is, woe is me. And because he wasn't attentive and more expressive enough, he wasn't expressive enough with his feelings. Like that's why she ended up cheating and whatnot. And so he didn't show up because of the train issue. And so she's all upset thinking like he doesn't want her back and woe is me. Like, even if he didn't, like you cheated on him, like you have no pedestal to stand on, And her friends basically, I did enjoy her friends. They called her out, like, you're selfish. Like, and so she's supposed to collect this pig for her one friend who's always wanted a miniature teacup pig, which is not a thing. Again, just a little bit of research. Like, they don't fit in a teacup. Like, they still get to 100 to 200 pounds. Like, they're not that tiny. And just a little bit of research on the author's part. So the whole premise of that one was just ridiculous. And so I didn't really enjoy that one. But like I said, the cohesiveness between the three stories being from three different authors was top notch. Like that part was fantastic. And it was a fun time, for a holiday read. It was really fun. Then we had 13 4 stars. So we definitely had the most 4 stars. The bottom of that one is The Christmas Box by Richard Paul Evans. Super, super short. I think this is probably one of his better known books. This one, let's see when it was written. This is like the 30th anniversary edition. So 1993, and this edition is from 2023. So this one I really enjoyed. So you have this family, and it's a fictional story, but he uses himself and his wife as characters. And so basically it's them, they're a young couple with and he wrote it for his daughters. And I don't know if the daughter in here, if that is one of his daughter's real name or not. I don't know. But at least him and his wife, he uses them as characters, even though it's a fictional story. So basically, they moved to, I want to say Utah or somewhere, and it was a business opportunity selling, renting like formal wear. It was a rental for formal wear, which wasn't a big thing at the time. So just getting started. So he's spending a lot of time working. And they're in this small apartment, and their daughter's like 4 or something and still in a crib, and they don't have room to get her a bed or anything like that. And so they see this ad for this lonely old woman who wants somebody to just live on site and cook and do the laundry for her, and then some small like landscaping maintenance and such. But she has somebody that does like the big stuff. So they're like, this way we can save money, and what's cooking and doing laundry for one more person, like, let's do it. So they move in, and she has like a backstory that they don't know. And he finds this box in the attic with letters. And so he ends up talking to a neighbor and kind of learning more about that and such. And I kind of see where the author went for the ending, but something is revealed in the middle that even the old lady doesn't know about. Like, she learns it in the middle, and I don't know. Again, it just was like tragedy for tragedy's sake, and it lessened the impact of it. And so this old woman's like trying to get across, like, family is important. Like, work can wait. Like, spend time with your family now. Um, yeah, just that reveal in the middle. I think if it had been like she learned that and then that's why she's putting this ad in the paper, and such, I think it would have worked better for me. But it just felt like tragedy for tragedy's sake, to add to it. And that's kind of what dropped it down for me. I didn't love that aspect, but otherwise, like, it was a great little, like, heartfelt, um, emotional story. So next, we have my last book misread, which was The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson, the little tiny novella, like only 93 pages. And super short, but I thought it was very well done. Again, not a big mystery person and don't really like short stories, and so that's what dropped it down for me. But otherwise, I thought it was really well done for what it is. And so basically, you have this American, and she's over in England, at university, and she's going to be staying there for the holidays. She doesn't have any family at home. And so one of her classmates invites her to come home with her for the week leading up to Christmas. And then she has this brother there who is suspected. There was a girl that was murdered like a few months before, and he's suspected of being the one to do it. And so you kind of have that mystery. And the first half is like the diary entries of this American, and then it kind of switches to reflect on like the rest of the events that took place. Um, and kind of the twist in the middle, like, I did not see it coming, and I really enjoyed it. Like, kind of who did it and the way it played out was pretty predictable because you only have a handful of characters. But that twist in the middle, I did not see coming, and I really enjoyed it. Is this one I would read again? Probably not, because once you know it, you know it. And like some mysteries and such, like, I don't have the best memory, so I can reread them and be fine. But in this case, because it's so short, like, it's kind of a one-time read and then you're done. But it was really fun for the holidays, and I thought it was really well done for how short it was. So then we had the other book by Mary Higgins Clark and Carol Higgins Clark called Deck the Halls. And so this takes place before the other one. This is when our amateur sleuth, and the private investigator first meet, because the private investigator's father and his driver end up getting kidnapped. He has like funeral homes, very successful, like, multiple locations and such. And then her mom is like a mystery writer. Mom's in the hospital with a broken leg. He gets kidnapped. And then, she's trying to come together with our amateur sleuth who has connections because our private investigators from like LA and they're in New York. And so she has connections on the force, and she ends up bringing in, I think his name's Jack O'Reilly, not O'Reilly. I always add the O, just Riley. And he has the same last name as, you know, the private investigator and such. And so, yeah, it's just them, and they're trying to figure out who took her father, where they could be, and they're demanding a ransom and everything. So they're just trying to deal with that. And it's fun. Again, some unnecessary POVs. But past that, like, the characters actually felt like main characters, even though you're also still following like the bad guys and such as well. So this one was fun. Again, just too many POVs for me to fully love it, but I did have a good time with it. So there's that. Then let's see here. We had that was Deck the Halls. So next we had another Richard Paul Evans with The Mistletoe Promise. This one was actually fun. It's a fake dating. And so basically you have these two, and one's a lawyer. He works like on the higher floor of this building, and then she works on the lower floor. She like does travel things for like school trips and sets those up. And so he approaches her one day. There's like a food court in the building, and so they always eat lunch there. And he approaches her one day and he's like, I want somebody to spend the holidays with. Like, would you be willing to be like my fake girlfriend for just the holidays? Like, no, past like maybe holding hands or something or hugging, like no intimacy or anything like that. We'll have a contract because I'm a lawyer and that's what I do. So he makes up this contract with the rules, and they have to do, a date each week, and he ends up buying her stuff and such. And then he's like, I just, want somebody to spend the holidays with. And so she has a big secret from her past. And so she ends up agreeing, and they spend the holidays together. And, obviously feelings develop. The thing I liked about this one is kind of like her secret. It's just because you do a horrendous thing and make a horrendous mistake, does that make you a bad person? And do you deserve to still have a life, a happy life after doing this horrible thing? And I wish the thing that dropped this one down, because I really enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the time they spent together, I enjoy that question of morality, and like it kind of opens your own eyes to your judgments and such. And I still kind of struggling with that, because in my mind, like what she did, like nobody, but like how could anybody do that, But at the same time, like she's probably beating herself up more than anybody. And the way it was set up, like you can kind of understand, but not really. And anyway, so I like that. But he also has this big secret, and he has a connection to her as well. And that's what I don't like about it. I think he just took it too far. Again, adding in like, okay, well, we got to make it extra tragic, And so yeah, that's what I didn't like about it, is his like connection and his big mistake from the past. I wish it would have been fine either one or the other, but I think having both, it was just too much. Like maybe if he just had that so he could empathize with her once he learns her secret or something, or if he just had that connection without his big event. I don't know. It just dropped it down for me because it was just one step too far for me. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this. I was pleasantly surprised by this going into it. So there's that. Then we had my last Mary Higgins Clark. This is just by her, not her daughter. And this is called Silent Night. And this one was actually a lot of fun. I could see myself rereading this again. So you have this family, and their dad has leukemia, and so he needs to have this surgery. He is a doctor, and so he has this friend in New York. So he wants that friend to perform the surgery. So they go. So his family's out and about. They're at the Rockefeller Center. And his mom, you have the mom and the two young boys. And the younger boy sees his mom drop her wallet, and this person picks it up. So he ends up like he's trying to get their attention, but the music's too loud. Like there's a street musician, and his mom had given him and his brother money to go give to the street musician. He's like he's losing her in the crowd, so he just takes off after this person and follows her. Then you have this other escaped felon, like he escapes from prison, and he's on the run. And so the cops are looking for him. So they're looking for this little boy. They're also looking for this escaped felon. And the person who picked up the wallet has ties to this escaped felon. So you're following the little boy ends up, getting in a lot of danger and a lot of, bad situations. And so you're following him, and, as the people are the cops and such are trying to piece together and make the connections and such. And so it really is a fun, thriller story for the holidays. And I liked, yeah, you had the father with leukemia, you had the mom, and she's upset, but it's not overdone. And that's what I really enjoyed about this one. Again, some point of views that were unnecessary. Just not, I don't like it. So that's kind of what dropped it down for me, but a really fun one. And I can see myself revisiting that one in the future. Then we had The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. So this is book 2 in a series. There's just the 2, it's a duology. And the first one is Mr. Fixer Upper, which I had actually gotten this one and noticed it was part of the series. So I got Mr. Fixer Upper and read it. I definitely preferred that one. So in this one, we're following Kat, who is the other half. Gannon is her brother and is one of the main characters in the first one. They have a reality TV show. And so in this situation, there was a big hurricane, and there's this town, I think in Connecticut, I want to say, and it gets hit, and they do a big Christmas, and that's when they bring in all the money. There's big Christmas event because it's called Mary or something like that. So she had helped the family there on their reality TV show before, and now that work was destroyed. And so she wants to come in, and she's convincing the network, hey, let's go help this town, and we can, revisit this family, help them out, and fix some of the other locations as well, and help this town and help them put on Christmas, essentially. Well, I don't know if he's the mayor or town manager, and he's a single dad. And so he's dealing with, the effects of the flood, and something happened when they were there on the show, initially, for the first time when they renovated this family's home. And so that's the impression he has of Kat, is from that event. She gets in a bar fight, essentially. He never ended up meeting her because she was sleeping off a hangover and such. So she never ended up meeting her, but he just has that impression. So he's dead set against it. And then he finally okay, she uses one of the kids, because the family she helped, their daughter is best friends with his daughter. And so she telling her about it, and it was his idea. So he kind of has to save face and be okay, fine. And so they're kind of, butting heads and such. And he starts to realize that he may have had some misconceptions about her. And 2 of her friends, basically sit him down and you don't know who she is. You don't know what happened there, and that you don't know who she is as a person. So it's their romance. I liked the little girl in this one. She was a lot of fun. I thought that she was done really well, and her best friend. I did like the couple. The biggest thing with this one is Kat. She is all about her career, so she doesn't really want to settle down and have a family, and so she thinks it's all or nothing. And she's trying to start this school, so she's trying to find a location, and she will be kind of less active as far as the network goes. But she's just it's all or nothing. And the way Kat, as she's presented in the first one and also in this one, she has a good head on her shoulders. And so how immature she acted in regards to this relationship. And he came in and he decorated her trailer for Christmas as a way to apologize. And how dare he, we, I had one, intimacy, and he thinks that he can just come in and touch my stuff. And it's girl, she was creating her own drama. And I just didn't think it fit the character very well. She's a smart lady, and how immature she was acting just didn't fit. I did listen to this, and I actually listened to it with my husband. And so, yeah, it was just the immaturity of her. And at one point, he comes flying in, and this is when he still has the misconception, and he sees the family little girl, his little girl's best friend, on the stoop with Kat crying, and he's like, she just made her cry for the cameras. And my husband pointed out, like, he's kind of an observant guy, like, based on his character and such, like, he would have noticed that there were no cameras. Like, I don't see him flying off the handle like that. So, like, things like that, like, just didn't fit the characters. Him flying off the handle, her being super immature, just really didn't fit the characters. But otherwise, it was fun, and I really did enjoy it. So there's that one. Then let's see here. We had this one, Christmas Presents by Lisa Unger. This is my first time reading this author, and I really enjoyed it. So you have Madeline. She runs a bookstore, and she gets approached by this guy, and he's doing a podcast. She basically survived an attack when she was like a teen. She survived an attack, and one of her friends got killed and 2 went missing. And so first she's like, I'm not talking to you. I don't want to bring that up. And her best friend is kind of like was there too. And so she finally agrees to talk to the guy, and she's kind of hiding it from her best friend. And then they're trying to kind of figure out what happened back then and what potentially happened to these 2 friends that went missing. And they know the one guy. It was somebody who moved to town, and she started dating him. But they suspect that there was a second person involved, and that's what they're trying to figure out. And kind of the connection with that second person fell really flat for me. It didn't necessarily make sense. Like, I didn't like how that was explained, and that's what dropped it down. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this one, and I would definitely read more from this author for sure. So there's that one. Then we had a 2-in-1. So this is The Shadows of Christmas Past. It had Rocky Mountain Myracle by Christine Feehan and A Touch of Harry by Susan Sizemore. This was a lot of fun. It has a Western touch, a paranormal, like magical realism touch. So in A Rocky Mountain Myracle, both of these female main characters are veterinarians, and they have the ability to communicate with animals kind of in slightly different ways. So in the first one, you have Maya, and you have Cole. And Cole has recently moved back to town. Maya is a traveling veterinarian, so she just fills in, so she's new to the town. Where Cole grew up in this town, but he left. His father is extremely abusive. He left, didn't realize he had a half brother who was born after he left, who is 14 now, and their father dies, and he's named guardian of his half brother, and they get an inheritance. And so there's kind of a rumor around town that he killed his father, and now he's going to kill his brother to get his inheritance, which is just a rumor. And so Maya's like a little nervous, but she ends up going out to the ranch with him because one of the horses got ran through a fence. And so there's suspicious things happening. One, the father's death, and now suspicious things are happening. Part of which is this rumor as well that plays into it. And Maya can talk to animals. And so she's always traveling because she's been burned when she's revealed her gift by others. And Cole's really closed off because his father was so abusive and such. So he's just kind of an ass and really closed off. And he's trying to do his best by his brother. And they both hate Christmas because their father would get more abusive at Christmas time. And so she's trapped there because there's a blizzard and there's weird happenings going on. And so they're trying to figure out like who's behind everything and what's going on. So that one was a lot of fun. And then in A Touch of Harry, it's werewolves. Well, not just werewolves, but just were animals in general. And so you have Marjorie, and she ends up, this dog and this wolf cross her path, and there's these 2 men shooting at them. And so the 2 men end up leaving, and she goes and finds the animal because she's a veterinarian. And she takes the dog and the werewolf, well, she thinks it's just a wolf, back to her kennels, not realizing that he's also a man. And so he transforms. And then he's searching for this group of teen wares who have run away from home, because they kind of have this council that's basically trying to keep the fact that there's rare animals from humans. And so they have a lot of rules, and one of them is you can't mate with a human. And so these teens don't like the old school rules, and so they run off, and he's brought in to track them. And so he turns into a man, and like she's like, "What's going on?" And he ends up enlisting her help essentially. And so yeah, it was fun. Um, and that's that. I'm not a huge werewolf one. Cole in the first one in the beginning was very manhandling and inappropriate, like on the borderline of not taking no for an answer. And that's kind of what dropped it down for me. But I could see myself revisiting this one. I like kind of that Western aspect. I like the magical realism aspect, the ability to talk to animals and such. So I had a fun time with that one. There's that. And then let's see here. Next, we had, this is a rollover. This wasn't part of 24 Days of Bookmas. This was my last priority standalone that I had to read, and that was Wild Women and the Blues by Denny S. Bryce. So this was a gift by Michelle at Reading on My Breaks, and I ended up having it for a while before I was able to get to it. It just never quite worked into my TBRs, which is why I made it a priority read for 2025. And I ended up really enjoying this. So basically, you have Honoré Dalcourt and Sawyer Hayes. So you have a 1925 timeline and a 2015 timeline. And she is like a dancer at a kind of shady cafe, like Miss Hattie's or whatever. Or not cafe, but like a speakeasy. And she gets the opportunity to audition and start working for like a Black and Tan, I think is what it's called, um, like speakeasy, where she'll be one of the dancers there. So it's a little bit nicer. And things happen. A lot of things happen. And so you have prohibition, you have like gambling and such. You kind of have a mob aspect, which I wasn't expecting going in. Because what it tells you on the back is basically you have Sawyer in 2015, and he finds these pictures and an old film in his grandmother's things. Um, and so he thinks it's one of the films is an Oscar Machow. Uh, and that part, I don't, again, know why it was in there because, like, yes, the film and that kind of brings him to Honoré, or Honoré, I think is how it's pronounced. But again, like, it didn't really add anything to the story. Like, he could have found the connection and gone there anyway. And in the 1925 timeline, she meets him once and references him one other time. I was expecting it to be the story of how she got onto this film and such, and it's not. It's more about the mob and the speakeasy and prohibition and such. Like, it's really not about how she got involved with this filmmaker and how she ended up. And honestly, with the events, I don't even understand when she would have filmed that video because of the event. So kind of a little bit of a plot hole there. Um, but otherwise, like it was so much fun, and I really enjoyed like the two timelines. I liked him when he was talking to elderly Honoré. I like kind of the twist at the end. It was mainly like again what I was expecting and what was delivered was a little bit different. And like I'm like the whole premise was this filmmaker and her being on this film, but it's only referenced. She meets him once, and he's referenced one other time. And like with the main events of what's going on in the 1925 timeline, like when did she have time to film that? Like when was that filmed? Because based on the events, it wouldn't have been. Like it didn't make sense to me, and that's what dropped it down. But otherwise, I really enjoyed it. I found myself like really thinking of this when I wasn't reading it, because obviously I was focusing on Bookmas books. And like I was like, when can I squeeze in a few chapters and such like that? And I was finally able to just sit down and devote to it the last week of the month, of course. But yeah, I really had a good time. So thank you again to Michelle for sending this to me. I had a fantastic time with that. So there's that. Then we have another 2-in-1. This is A True Christmas by Donna VanLiere. It contains the Christmas note and the Christmas town. In A Christmas Note, you have these two neighbors, and it really that one that dropped the whole thing down for me, that first story, because you have Gretchen Daniels, and she moves to town with her two kids, and her new neighbor, the landlord of her mother's, ends up coming by and trying to get a hold of her. Her neighbor's not home, so Gretchen's like, like, can I help you? And he's like, I'm looking for this person. I don't know their name. I've been knocking on doors. And she's like, that's so and so. And he's like, that's it. And basically, her mom died. You can tell her. And leaves it up to Gretchen to tell her new neighbor, who's very grumpy and closed off, that her mother has died. So she ends up going to tell her and offers to help her clean out her mother's things. The landlord has given her a week to clean out her mother's things. So Gretchen's like, I'll go and I'll help you. They find a note that reveals a secret. And so then it's about, learning more about the secret and such. The connections that were made in this one were just really, really convenient. And I didn't love that. And that's what dropped it down for me. Then you have Christmas Town, which takes place in the same town. And you have Gretchen's mom and her best friend are also in the Christmas Town. Gretchen and what's the other? I don't know the other woman's name, but they're not in it. Like, they're the main characters of the first one. They're not in the Christmas Town. But like I said, Gretchen's mom and her best friend are. So you have Lauren, and she works like in a town that's an hour away. And she's just like a cashier. She's just kind of over life. And so she ends up going for a drive, witnesses a hit and run. So becomes involved in that and ends up having to come back to the town. And then I think it's the friend of the mom of Gretchen, like, has this like charity and helps people, like specifically women that are kind of hard on their luck, but people in general. And they're putting on this fundraiser, and so she ends up getting involved in that and really getting involved in this town. And I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, it was really the first one. Like, the connections were really, really convenient, and I was just like, "Oh, come on!" Like, and there was more than one connection that was really convenient that I just didn't love, and so that's what dropped it down. But otherwise, I read a couple other Donna VanLiere before. They're really, heartwarming, heartfelt stories for Christmas. So if you like those types of stories, this is definitely an author to check out for sure. So there's that one. And then let's see here. Next, we have Spending the Holidays with People I Want to Punch in the Throat by Jen Mann. I wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did. This was so fun. So it's basically just a collection of essays, and most of them are Christmas related. And then in the third section, it's other holidays. And she's just talking about, like, at one point she's talking, her mother's very into Christmas, so she's talking about, my mom has this many Santa Clauses, I have zero. And things like that, decorating, the church carolers, like, just different situations from the holidays. And it was surprisingly, I'm not a big humor person, I'm not a big essay person, but these were surprisingly funny. Like, at one point, like, she's older now, and her mom used to make her and her brother take pictures with Santa. And so as an adult, she's like, hey, we should go take pictures with Santa, but they don't want to go to the good mall because that line's super long. So they go to the shady mall and the shady Santa, and he ends up like pinching her butt. And so, like, the picture, she's all surprised, and her brother's like laughing hilariously, like things like that. It was just funny. And I had a fantastic time with that. So I was really surprised, really surprised by that. There was obviously some that was just kind of fell flat for me, which again is why it's not higher up. Then we had the other Ginny Baird. Whoops, they're falling over. The other Ginny Baird, The Holiday Mix-Up. Now, it doesn't specifically say, so I don't know for sure, but based on the premise, I'm pretty sure this is kind of inspired by the movie While You Were Sleeping, which has Sandra Bullock. It's one of my favorite. Based on the things that happen, like I could pick out specific points. Which in that movie, Sandra Bullock, there's a guy that comes through. She does the subway tokens, and he comes through every day, and she just like has this huge crush on him. Like, oh, I want to marry you one day. He comes through on Christmas. She doesn't have any family. He's like, Merry Christmas, and she's like, Anyway, he gets assaulted and knocked onto the train tracks, and he's unconscious, and she jumps down and saves him because there's a train coming. She goes to the hospital. One of the nurse, like, she's like, I was gonna marry him, like, just, like, she doesn't know him, but she had that fantasy, and a nurse overhears her, and like, and she's his fiance, and the family's there, and it gets a big mix-up. And that's kind of the same thing here. So you have Katie, and she has a huge crush on Juan, who she works in a diner, and he comes to the diner, and he asks her to be his fake girlfriend. She agrees. Well, promptly, like, he ends up almost getting hit by a van. And so she ends up like knocking him out of the way of this van, and he ends up knocking his head, and they put him into an induced coma. And so he already told his family that he's bringing home this girlfriend, which he never does. Like, he, again, is kind of a player, excuse me, kind of a player, and never brings home girls. And so that's kind of weird. So they're thinking this must be really serious. And grandma is already seeing wedding bells. Abuela is seeing wedding bells, wedding dresses, makes Katie try on her wedding dress and such. Well, she meets Juan's brother, Mateo. And Juan's, it's a winery. The family runs a winery. And Juan is kind of making decisions. Like, he wants to modernize things where they're very like family tradition and such. The rest of the family is. And so she ends up starting to have feelings for Mateo, but she's fake dating Juan, and she's like, I can't tell. Like, he made me promise not to tell, and now he's in a coma, and like his mom or his grandma, Abuela, has like asthma, and so like that will flare up when she gets upset. She's like, I can't tell them because grandma's gonna get upset and have a flare up. And so I just gotta wait till he wakes up because he's in an induced coma, so they're planning on waking him up once the swelling in his brain goes down to a certain extent. And so it just kind of gets out of hand. And again, like with the other one, I noticed this is just the author's like style, is she reiterates things. That one I was reading, every other day. And this one I read all at once, and I really noticed it in this one, how she just reiterates. She'll say something and then she'll say it again. And it's like, we're not stupid. Like, and the same thing like with the plot, like we know what's going on. And then the Groundhog Day, really like, it's a time loop. It's a time loop. Like, we know it's a time loop. The characters know it's a time loop. Like, you don't have to reiterate it so much. And she did the same thing. Like, well, like he's in a coma, and like we're fake dating, but I can't tell him that because he's in a coma, and just over and over. And it's like, we get it. We're not stupid as readers. Like, we get it. You don't have to reiterate it so much. And so that's really what dropped this one down, was because it was just like, we get it, we know. But I love Why You Were Sleeping is one of my favorite movies. So I love the premise of this one, and I like seeing those little connections. And it was fun, and I really liked the characters together. And so yeah, there was that one. And then let's see, my last 4-star of the month was an extra. I'm going to hit the microphone. So my last 4-star of the month was an extra. I got this for Christmas. My brother and sister-in-law gave it to me. And that's Holly by Adeline Grace. So it's 371 pages. It says it's a, Belladonna novella. And so basically we're following the 4 main characters from Belladonna, and they're gathered together for Christmas. And they're trying to make sure like the one character has the Christmas that she really wants. And there ends up being these spirits that are inhabiting the manor. And so Signa and such are trying to figure out like why these spirits are here and how they can help them move on, essentially. And I really enjoyed being back with these characters. I I noticed, so I read Belladonna obviously first, and then as I worked my way, like I liked the series, each one a little bit more. Um, but Signa and Silas aren't my favorite. Like I like them together, but just them themselves, like they're not personalities I would necessarily get along with if they were real people. Where like Blythe and Aris. So yeah, I just we were following all four viewpoints, and that kind of got where it was like, I don't know, I didn't enjoy all four viewpoints. I think it would have worked better for me if it had been like just two of the characters. Um it just wasn't very well balanced. I mean, it was balanced, but it just didn't flow as well, I don't think. And the mystery kind of fell a little flat for me, like solving these spirits and such. It wasn't as developed, which makes sense because it is a shorter story. And but the artwork in here, let me see if I can find one. The artwork is absolutely stunning. I loved it so much. So here's one of the artworks, which is beautiful. I like the green coloring, and this decorative border, it got longer each chapter, which was fun. I really like that touch. So yeah, it wasn't like bad by any means. I would have liked a little bit more of a focus viewpoint and the mystery to be a little bit more developed. I wish it had just been like, this is another just a holiday novel, because really it was long enough that really didn't feel like a novella, but it wasn't so long that she was able to develop that mystery as such as much. So 4 stars for that, but I really did enjoy it, and I was very happy to get it for Christmas. So there's that. Then we had 8 5 stars. So bottom of the barrel there was Scary Book of Christmas Lore by Tim Ray Rayborn, and it's 50 terrifying Yuletide tales from around the world. Mostly European based, like the northern European countries. But yeah, basically talking about like the different, like Krampus and the Wild Hunt, and like different, and it tells you like which countries they're from. Again, the artwork in this one is stunning, like stunning artwork. Like that's so cool. But it's talking about like the different like darker entities that are around Christmas time, or the winter time anyway. And it does talk a little bit about like Saint Nicholas and such, a little bit about that lore as well. And so yeah, I had a great time with this. It wasn't quite as dark and spooky as I was expecting. It was more factual, but it was really really interesting. And again, the artwork. So yeah, I love like learning about different folklore and such from around the world. So I had a great time with that. Got 5 stars. Then we did read. I still have the bookmark in here. I can take out my Santa. Ah, my Santa bookmark. So we read On Christmas Eve, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I've read it for the last several years. Last year we read it aloud with my mother-in-law, which I really had a great time. And so I've asked if she wanted to do that again, and she said yes. And my brother-in-law and his girl ended up staying and reading it aloud too. We took turns, which was fun. And yeah, I mean, obviously a reread for me, it's classic. And it's just fun to read it each year on Christmas Eve. So, not much to say about that one. Then we had another Richard Paul Evans. This was the first book I read by him, and that was A Christmas Memory. And this one was based. I don't know. It didn't have it as a nonfiction, so I don't know, again, because he did in the Christmas box, he used himself as a character, but it is based on his childhood. And so his parents basically went through a hard time and they moved, again, think to Utah. And it was a rough time of life for him. Um, and so he ends up being bullied by these kids at school. And so he's running home, and his neighbor, a black man, ends up saving him. And they develop a friendship. And I just really like, again, there's tragedy, there's heartbreak, but it's also inspiring and hopeful at the same time. So it's a very, very heartfelt read, and I absolutely loved it. This friendship between him and this man, his neighbor, was really nice, and he even mentions like nowadays, which you just can't, like a young boy being befriended by a older man, like that wouldn't be appropriate. So on one hand, like I'm very thankful that I was able to befriend him during that time, where nowadays like that would not be accepted for good reason. But not every older man. Sorry, been talking for too long. So not every older man who befriends a young boy is going to have nefarious purposes. And it was just a really beautiful story. So there's that one. Start putting them back in here. Pile's too big. Then we had The Snow Angel by Glenn Beck. I've read a couple Glenn Beck's books at this point. The Mortal Nicholas is still my favorite. I've read it twice now, and I love that one. And then I read The Christmas Sweater by him as well, which is fine. This one I really enjoyed as well, though. This is The Snow Angel. It does deal with domestic violence, so keep that in mind. And I really liked how we got two perspectives on domestic violence, because our main character, she grew up in an abusive household, and it was her mom who was abusive. So you have that perspective of her dad, um, and her growing up in that household, and it being her dad who was abused and her mom being the one that was abusive, which was interesting. And then she kind of grows up and kind of repeats the cycle, and now she has a daughter. And she has this friend. They kind of took her in after her mom passed away when she was 14. They kind of stepped up. Like her dad, he didn't really know how to show his love. Like he was a very like hardworking, like blue collar, like working hard, providing for his family. But he tried to show his love to his daughter, but he didn't really know how to connect with her and show that love. And so this wife and husband, who were the town tailors, um, ended up kind of giving her a job and taking her under their wing. So they were kind of like parental figures to her as well. And so her husband, obviously abusive, kind of cuts her off from all her friends and family and such, including them. And he ends up reaching out. His wife has died, and he's like, I need help. And so you really see her process, like not wanting her daughter to deal with the same things like she did, but also not thinking that she's being abused. And so you kind of see her process and realizing, like, hey, like, this is not okay. And do I want this life for my daughter, and kind of that process. Now, I will say, I think I connected to this one a little bit more because um, my stepdad was never physically abusive, but he was very emotionally, and he would just like fly off the handle. You have to walk on eggshells, never knowing what his mood would be. So I kind of had that connection, and so I think this struck a chord with me more than it might other people. But it was really beautiful, and kind of the snow angel. She has a specific memory with her father where one evening he took her out and to play in the snow, and they made snow angels. And so that's like a happy memory she has, and she's realizing like her father wasn't necessarily as bad. Like she put a lot of blame on her father, and it wasn't necessarily as cut and dried as she thought. So really, really great. I love Glenn Beck's writing. But Mortal Nicholas is still my favorite, but this one is a second favorite. And I don't know how many books Glenn Beck has other than the three that I read, but I'd definitely be interested in picking up more if he does have more. So there's that. Then we had Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. B.K. Borison, just the way they write really strikes home for me. Like it hits something that I need. And so you have Harriet, and she gets haunted by Nolan, who's the ghost of Christmas past. And normally he haunts like people who are kind of doing bad things that kind of need to take a turn in their life. And she is a people pleaser. Um, And so she's like, I'm like, I try to do good. Like, I'm trying to be a good person. Like, I don't know why you're haunting me. And they're going back to her memories and visiting her memories. And he's not saying anything. So he's like, this is an unusual assignment. I don't know what's happening. And so they, of course, start to develop feelings for each other. And then they end up like, his past starts to come into it, and so they're having to try to figure out what his connection is. And I really love these characters. I like the growth of the characters because he's kind of jaded at this point. Like, he's been doing this for centuries. Like, he thought at one point he would move on, at some point, and he never does. And so he's like, this is it for me. Like, this is my life now, or my afterlife now. And like her with her people pleasing, and kind of her estrangement from her family, like the growth of the characters, but especially in him because he is so jaded and he's been doing this for a century or so, and seeing like the worst of humanity. And Harriet's kind of a breath of fresh air for him, and it's kind of changing things up for him as well. And then he's pushing her to realize, like, you're not to blame and you don't have to please everybody. So really love that. Then we had another one I listened to, and that's Nick and Noelle's Christmas playlist. I didn't end up, there is a playlist like at the back. I didn't end up listening to that, but that's fun. It has the different songs they reference. A lot of pop culture references, which is to be expected. I love the characters in here. So you have Nick and Noelle, of course. Nick's been in the army. I think he's finally discharged, and so he's coming home. And his girlfriend, upon him arriving, breaks up with him and tells him, "I've been cheating on you." So he's kind of heartbroken about that. And Noelle, she lost her parents when she was young, and so during her teenage years, she lived with Nick and his family. But I liked how the author, because that can kind of be taboo, because they were living in the same household. And so I really liked how the author, because that can be taboo, made it clear like why they grew up together and then she lived with them for a while. Like, they never had that sibling relationship. Um, but Nick has always wanted a family, to get married, have kids. And Noelle, because she lost her family, she never wants to potentially lose another family. And so she never wants kids. She doesn't want to get married. She just has no strings attached flings with guys. And so basically, in order, she's seeing this guy, but again, not serious, but he doesn't even have the decency to tell her, like, hey, I met somebody and I'm going to date her now. Turns out they were sleeping together while he was still sleeping with Noelle, which is messed up. So anyway, she finds that out on Instagram, that he's seeing this girl. And Nick, ex, breaks up with him when he arrives and tells her she's been cheating. And so they end up dancing together and kissing, in front of them, to kind of make them jealous, and like, you're not affecting us any. Um, and Noelle and Nick's ex, because they grew up in this town and they've had beef since like they were in junior high, basically. Um, and so they're both have a mutual friend who's getting married, and they're both bridesmaids. So I really like that it wasn't just Nick as the conflict between these two, but that they had that past conflict, and their interactions through their other friend who was getting married, that it wasn't just all around Nick. I thought that was really, really well done. And I like Nick and Noelle, and I like how Noelle's friend, the one that's getting married, really calls Noelle out. And the way the author did it, because there's nothing wrong with a woman not wanting kids and not wanting to get married. And so I would have been upset if it was just like a flip that happened with Noelle. But she has that friend as her voice of reason, is like, do you really not want this, or are you just scared? And that was the difference. And that made it a lot more palatable, versus if, Noelle just flipped a switch. Oh, because it's Nick, like, okay, fine, I do want kids and I want a family with you. Like, no. like it was because she was scared. So it wasn't that she didn't want that. So I really liked how the author handled that as well. And yeah, I love this one. It was a great time. Then these next two books were not part of Bookmas, but my husband and I read the next Dungeon Crawler Carl book. This is book 5, The Butcher's Masquerade by Nat Dinneman. This one, you kind of have another town setting, which I noticed was a book 2, and then this one, so the third floor, and now we're on the 6th floor. I noticed those. I mean, they're still 5 stars, don't get me wrong, but I noticed those don't work as well for me as the other dungeon levels. And so this one's more of a town setting, more of quest, and it's the hunter level, so they're being hunted, and it's just a lot of fun. Like obviously, Carl and Princess Donut. I like that we're getting more growth, especially with Donut, and a little bit more conversations that are a little bit more emotional, and it really like made me tear up a couple of times. But this one, like, just Donut is so funny. Donut is my favorite character. Like I like Carl and I like the other characters, but Donut like takes the cake. And the way he balances Donut is just so great because she still has like that cat personality and a little bit of like that childlike innocence, but at the same time she's smart and intelligent. And then she's also like a diva and over the top. And like there's a scene at the end where Mongo performs and it was so funny. Like I was laughing so hard. And yeah, I love this series. We only have book 6 and 7 to go, and then book 8 comes out this summer. And then we'll have to wait. I think there's going to be 10 books in this series, but this is such a fantastic series. I love reading it with my husband. But it did not take this top spot because I had my annual reread of My Sergei by Ekaterina Gordieva with E.M. Swift. So this was a figure skating pair from the 80s, 90s. And my mom, this was her favorite pair back then. And so I remember watching, them skate. Like obviously in the 80s, I was just a baby, but like the 1994 Olympics, I want to say, I remember watching that with my mom, and watching figure skating in general with her. And so when I was a teenager, she was like, "You have to read this book," and bawled my eyes out. And then when I started this channel, I started rereading it. And so I think this is like my 5th time rereading it, and it's just such a beautiful story. And each time I get something a little different. Like one year I really noticed like the coming of age aspect of it, which it really is, like, because it starts, she starts from the time when she first started skating, when she was 4 years old, and then when she got paired with Sergey, and then their journey from there. And so it is a love story, but it's also a coming of age story. And it's just beautiful. And then this time around, I actually noticed more of the flaws. Like Ekaterina is very um, insecure at sometimes and very naive at sometimes. And I noticed that came through, like still super emotional. And I also focused more on the love story between her and Sergey, which I haven't always. Like I've noticed more of the coming of age aspect. And I just love how we get like the behind the scenes of her thoughts. Like I watched a couple of the routines, like the Lillehammer Olympics and such, and getting her thoughts in the Calgary Olympics and getting her thoughts behind the scenes there. Like it's such a beautiful story. I absolutely love rereading this each year. So there is my top one. So that is all the books by star rating, but like I said, I do have my top 3. So the number 1 book that kind of stands out of all these books I read is The Scary Book of Christmas Lore by Tim Rayborn. I just love the history and the culture in there. I love the artwork. The artwork was so stunning. And I like the darker themes. Like I kind of like that around the holidays as well, especially in the middle of winter, and well, not the middle of winter, but I don't know, like that dark. It's cold. Not here where I live, but just that dark and cold vibes. I love it. The number 2 was actually Wild Women in the Blues by Denny S. Bryce. I love the setting of the 1920s jazz age Chicago. I love the dual timeline. And I like kind of that reminiscing on your life and your past. With, what, she was 110 or something. That was, I like that aspect. And then number 3, I had to give it to my Sergei, even though it's a reread. Like, it's such a beautiful story. I love the nostalgic aspect I have with it. I like the coming of age aspect. And I love the behind the scenes look. Like, watching her skate at the Calgary Olympics, you would never know like how nervous and such she was, and like how she blocked out most of that Olympics. Like, you wouldn't know that looking at her and watching her skate. So I love that book so much. So that is it. I know this video was even longer than normal for me. But I had a lot to talk about. If you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. I would love to know if you read any of these books, or if you're interested in any of these books now that I've talked about them. I would love to know that down in the comments below, or what your favorite book from December was. If you just want to let me know you were here and help support the channel by commenting, you can always leave a rabbit or any type of animal emoji. And I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.